It's tough for a government agency of any kind, or anybody for that matter, to get a real reading on what the public thinks about a given situation. When a government agency, for instance, holds a hearing to try to find out what the public wants, the people who are most likely to show up are those with vested interests. They have the time and the money to get to the meeting place after all. But Betty Furness went to a very different kind of government hearing, and she's here this morning to describe it for us. Betty?
Tom, it was the Food and Drug Administration that's been holding hearings all over the country to find out what information people want on the labels of food packages. The final hearing was held in Boston last Wednesday, but the one Tom is talking about was in Columbus, Ohio, the week before that. And instead of going to a meeting and raising their hands to be heard, consumers stayed at home and pushed buttons. I went to Columbus to see how it worked. FDA Commissioner Donald Kennedy and John Steinberg, the consumer advocate on a two-way cable television system called Qube, discussed the subjects on which the FDA wants input in Qube's television studio. Although there was a live audience, the questions were aimed at the viewers at home. Each question on what kind of information there should be on food packages was broken down into a maximum of 5 choices, which were shown on the TV screen. Viewers who subscribed to Qube could then push a button at home.
In addition, you will see 5 buttons over here on the left. Those are the response buttons. When we ask a question, you will see flashing on the screen afterwards the words "Touch Now." We'll reinforce that for you, but when you see that, you touch the proper button, and it's just a quick touch like that. And the light will go on next to it, and you touch the button for the answer that you wish. And that's the way we're going to do it.
With the help of a computer, the percentage of people who voted for each choice was recorded and tabulated. The answer was then put up on a sort of scoreboard. One of the questions that interested me a lot related to drained weight, the weight of canned foods like fruit and vegetables without the liquid it's packed in. Not only was the public at home asked how they'd like that weight measured, they were asked how much more they'd be willing to pay to have this information.
This can costs 55 cents today. If you were buying it tomorrow with drained or filled weight, how much more would you be willing to spend for this one can to pay for drained weight, to know that there were only 11 ounces of pears in there, not 16? Button number 1 is up to a penny more for the can. Button number 2 is up to 2 cents more for this one can. Button number 3, 3 cents more for the one can. Button number 4 is only 1/10 of a penny more. And button number 5, I just don't want to have to spend any more money, even if I can get more information.
Commissioner Kennedy knew very quickly that the biggest percentage, 35%, of the people only want to pay 1/10 of a cent for the information. But 25% are willing to pay up to a cent a can, and 18% don't want to pay anything. What people would pay for more information on food packages was really the bottom line. When the public had been polled on all the subjects, the results were tabulated by putting all that information they'd voted for on a giant cereal box. And then the question came. In order to have that information, what would you be willing to pay on a $20 grocery order? 33% of the audience was willing to pay 7 to 15 cents an order to be better informed about what they eat. I asked Commissioner Kennedy how he felt about this special hearing. Commissioner, did you get a different feeling questioning people over television than you do just hearing their testimony in a hall?
Oh, yes, I think so. You get to tailor the questions a little bit. You have the sense that you're hearing from many more people. You can kind of readjust in midstream. It's very different from the hearing process. Despite our best efforts, the hearing process tends to single out the organized. And I think this process reaches for the individual. I think it's fair to say that some of the viewers out there are about as close as anyone will ever get to being really involved in the making of a new law in this country.
Betty, how many people participated in that hearing through the Qube system?
They told us about 3,000 people were tuned in, Tom, which is really a larger sample than many big sampling organizations use.
They would use maybe 1,500 or 700.
Right.
It's not a random sample because it involves the people who own the Qube system, but does that not distort it somewhat? Because the people who own the Qube system, it seems to me, are likely to be more interested in what is going on and also to have a higher income level because it costs extra money.
Well, you would think so, Tom, because Qube can be expensive depending on what options you use on it. But I ran into a black taxi driver who didn't look like a wealthy man to me, who has the Qube system and wouldn't be without it. He was just crazy about it. So I think you probably do get a pretty good cross-section of people.
You asked some questions as well.
I did indeed. I became so fascinated with this whole system. You can't believe the thrill you can get asking questions and getting an immediate answer. I stayed over for a day and asked my own questions, and on Thursday I will show you what came out of that.
All right, let me ask a question here. What's coming? Oh, it says that Rick Davis is coming up. Next, you'll have a report on George Qube, the well-known conductor. But first, this message.
There was some voting last night in Columbus, Ohio, but the ballot boxes were of a most unusual kind. A federal hearing on food and drug labels was brought into the homes of thousands of subscribers to a cable television system known as Qube. Not only were they able to watch the hearing, they were also able to answer back. Ron Miller has that story.
Meet Dr. Donald Kennedy, the Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration. Dr. Kennedy is on the spot. He's about to go on television in Columbus and hear from 3,000 people about what they want on their food and drug labels. It's an electronic town meeting. These computers at the Qube Cable Television Systems headquarters will analyze the responses coming back from the viewing public. Within seconds, Dr. Kennedy will know what the people think. Mike and Jan Fitzpatrick are settling down with some friends in the Qube console, which allows them to communicate from their living room with Dr. Kennedy. They're anxious to give the commissioner a piece of their mind.
It's the combination of chemicals that we're putting in. Every food that we eat has a preservative of some kind.
The broadcast begins, and Qube's consumer affairs specialist, John Steinberg, discusses with Dr. Kennedy the use of chemical names on food labels.
Calcium sterol, lactolate, sodium. I can't. If you know what those words mean, touch button number 1. If you don't, touch button number 2. Touch when the sign flashes, please.
Good question, the Fitzpatricks agree, and prepare to respond by pushing the appropriate button on their console. 6 seconds later, Dr. Kennedy is told the results.
14% of our Qubesumers at home knew what those mean, and I hope they're nutritionists or chemists.
And so it went for an hour and 25 minutes, and when it was over, Dr. Kennedy was impressed.
I guess my dominant impression is that it's a wonderful way to go to people and ask them what they think.
The Fitzpatricks were delighted to be counted, but they're displeased that so few Ohio elected officials have used Qube to have their political statements evaluated by the public. Perhaps the Fitzpatricks say politicians don't really want to know if the public believes them. Ron Miller, ABC News, Columbus.